This week on Eco Show, we'll be talking about glaciers. What are they? What are they doing? How are they enjoying life? Then we'll be talking about the interaction between gentrification and tick-borne disease for our research. And then we'll talk about, in the news, we'll be talking about a whole bunch of things, including a big migration that's going on and some other things. This is Eco Show. Hello and welcome to Eco Show. This is a show about ecology, the environment, happenings in that space, from news to research. The outline of the show is that at the start of each show, we talk about a thing of the week that could be a plant, animal, or something else. And we'll talk about a little bit of research that's been happening in ecology. And we'll wrap up with some nice news about things going on that are eco related. So those kind of can be wide ranging sometimes. Usually I'm just looking for things relating to the environment that feel kind of good. This week, our thing of the week is the glacier, the glacier. And the name glacier comes from the Latin glacier. That may have been a wrong pronunciation, wrong way of saying it, but that's how we're saying it. And that means ice in Latin. So it makes sense. And what are glaciers? They are very, very dense ice that are moving under their own weight. And they form when snow is coming down and when more snow is accumulating than is dissipating back off into the atmosphere. They can take many, many years to form, and they can also, over those many years that they exist, they can alter the landscape. So we have a photo here that shows, I think this is Kings Canyon in California, and it's showing this deep glacier that's here that has scoured out this great little U shape through the valley. And there are telltale signs of these glaciers that will be these sort of skid marks that you'll see along the sides of a valley, and they tend to have these sort of U shapes. Some of the things that glaciers may do that can leave evidence is they can leave moraines, which are these big hills of debris that will be pushed up at the end of a glacier. So the glacier's going and moving in a particular direction, and you'll have this whole bunch of debris that will be right at the end of it. You can also get these, I believe they're called erratic stones, which will be these giant stones that you'll find in the middle of a field somewhere that will have been transported there likely by a massive glacier that melted a long, long time ago. And 99%, so here's some little factoids for you about glaciers. 99% of glacial ice is at the poles. And outside of the poles, the country with the most glaciation is Pakistan, which was surprising to me. They've got a bunch of mountains there, so they've got a bunch of high altitude mountains. They cover 10% of the Earth's land surface, which sounds like a lot, and it is quite a bit. And that would be basically entirely due to Antarctica. And the average thickness of the ice on Antarctica was mind blowing to me. It's over 2,000 meters. So that means that's not even the deepest bit. That's the average thickness of the ice on Antarctica, which is over 7,000 feet. And this is the largest reservoir of fresh water on Earth. At 69% of our fresh water is in there. So here's a little photo here that's comparing our largest buildings. We've got a few different buildings. So hopefully there's one that relates to where you are at, so you can get a good representation. But the tallest building we have on this list, at just over 800 meters, is the Burj Khalifa. And so we're saying that on average, the ice over Antarctica is over double that thickness. So we're talking about 10% of the land surface roundabout is covered in ice that's that thick. So that is amazing. There's a huge amount of ice down there, and they're generally just called ice sheets. And these are important up in the high mountains because they can be a source of water through the summertime for ecosystems and little beings up in the mountains. And a few little factoids here is, if all of that ice was melted, it would rise, sea levels would rise by 70 meters or 230 feet. These are generally looked at a lot around climate change because glaciers respond directly to changes in precipitation, clouds, temperature. They're responding to all these different sort of things. So if there's less cloud, then more sunlight is hitting it and melting it. If it's warmer, they're going to be melting more. And if there's precipitation at various temperatures, they may be accumulating or melting even more quickly. The blue color that is known for, that glaciers are sort of known for, is because water absorbs colors other than blue better. So you're getting blue light reflected back. And in particular, the glaciers are so heavy and dense that all of the air bubbles are pushed out of it. So it is kind of like a just solid block of water. There's no air bubbles in that, which would usually make things look white. And in particular around global warming, probably heard a bit about these things already, but just good to cover anyhow, is that one of the issues with global warming and glaciers is that as things get warmer, you get these puddles on top of glaciers, and those puddles absorb more heat than the glacier would on its own. So those side views we would have seen of glaciers are looking blue, but generally the top of glaciers will be looking white because there are air bubbles in that ice and things like that. So it won't have been compressed out at that point. But when things get warmer and you get these puddles developing, you can have those as being little heaters almost. They're absorbing heat from sunlight and will be melting it down quickly. And the more melting you have, this is sort of a cycle. So the ice albedo feedback is because the more warming you get, the more melting you get. These glaciers have an important practical use as well, as they can hold ice that is up to 800,000 years old. And scientists will take that ice and look at the different molecules that are in it to learn things about our past. They can look at different particles that may have been in the atmosphere. Sometimes you can see evidence of when volcanoes have erupted and things like that. So it's a very cool little library that we have down there as well. And I was looking into the ecology around glaciers, because that's not something I'd really heard about before. These are not very good environments for life because of the exposure to UV light. Usually it's pretty exposed to sunlight, and it's very cold, obviously. But there are actually a lot of things that will be living on glaciers. So next time you're on a glacier and want to put it in your drink, maybe think about it before you do that, because you can have snow algae, you can have insects, you can have ice worms, rotifers, tardigrades, which we've talked about before. Tardigrades are their colloquial name is water bears, and they're cute / kind of terrifying looking creatures that are really adaptable and able to live in hardcore environments. There's also fungi, and there are snow fleas. And I think I'll have a photo of some ice worms there for you, which are looking pretty wormy little guys. This is all sort of relying on bits that will end up melting, and that liquid water is essential for these beings. And it's a cool thing on a small scale, because these will be migrating upwards. So the glacier is moving down constantly all year. This is not so much with the ice sheets, but with glaciers that may be in high mountains, and you have a large scale upward migration that's constant for lots of these little animals living out there. Yep, so here's our ice worm, and it is hanging out on some ice for us there. Okay, that's all we've got on glaciers for today, and now we're going to talk about some research on tick-borne disease and gentrification. So this research was coming about because there's not a lot of research looking at the social drivers of tick-borne disease. So in particular, this is a disease called Lyme disease, which can be carried around by deer and has some relationship with mice as well, and can be a pretty debilitating disease. And they were interested in looking at how gentrification may impact the spread of this disease. And gentrification is, I don't have a definition written for it down, but gentrification is generally a displacement of people due to socioeconomic conditions, and this can be the sort of classic example is a poorer part of the city, getting more investment, and wealthier people, generally wealthy white people, moving into the area and generally displacing black and brown people. This is research based in the US, so that's sort of how gentrification tends to go over there. And they were thinking about what happens to the movement and the relationship of this disease to people as gentrification happens. So they looked at 3 different scenarios, and in particular in people's exposure to Lyme disease, to tick-borne disease, under 3 scenarios. So you can have gentrification going on in the first scenario, and people are staying where they're living even though gentrification is going on. So there may be rehabilitation of parks, and more investment is basically coming into the area. And that can lead to, when you have more investment in parks, you're making more habitat for this tick-borne disease to be transported into the city. So they're pointing out that even if you, and then if you're going out and exercising in a park that you've always exercised in, but now it's rehabilitated and connected with the wider landscape, we tend to think about landscape connectivity in cities as being a good thing, which it is in a lot of cases, but in this particular example, by connecting inner city parks with parks or wildlife outside, by doing wildlife corridors or things like that, you're creating a pathway for this disease to come into the city and possibly impact a population of people that may not have been particularly informed about the reality of this disease. So that's the first scenario, where people are staying in place. The second scenario is where people are moved within the urban environment, but to even poorer areas. So you have gentrification going on, which is displacing people from an area that they're living. And one of the options, movement options, is to a place within the city that's even poorer. And these areas likely will have less park investment and oftentimes more unmanaged parks and more environmental pollution. So you can have dislocation of people into areas that are less managed, but still, as you've got development happening in other areas. So in a gentrified area, you may have a park being rehabilitated and connected with the wider landscape, which can allow for these tick-borne diseases to move into the city. And because there's that increased investment in that park, there's a higher likelihood that that park may have some treatment going on for those tick-borne diseases, but you're still creating a corridor which could lead to tick-borne diseases moving to these unmanaged parks in poor areas of the urban environment, and then you're exposing people to it in an unmanaged park situation. And the last sort of movement options, when an area gets gentrified and people are displaced, those people who are displaced may move to the suburbs. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of cases in the US, is people who are being dislocated from where they're living are moving out to the suburbs, and the suburbs just in general have more general exposure to tick-borne diseases because they're closer to wildlife and things like that. But people moving into those areas who will have grown up or been living in urban environments may not have had the same information translated to them about the threats of these diseases. So there's lots of different threats there. One of the things they didn't point out as well is that gentrification can just, these are all different areas that people move to, but it can also lead to homelessness, which is putting you more at the forefront of the environment. You have even less barriers in place between you and potential threats. So I thought that was kind of a sad but a cool research article, because those things are so interrelated, how we're treating our ecosystems, and it's so related to money and power in different ways. And it can have something like, revitalizing a park can feel like an objectively good thing, but in the context of our economic situation, that can lead to displacement of people and putting them at higher risk of getting diseases. So you really gotta, we live in a complex world for sure, and it's cool that we're at a point where we're acknowledging so many of these things. So it's really important that these decisions are being made in a really productive way by cities. You can't just be going in there and just gentrifying places, because you have going to get some bad consequences from that. Okay, on to our news. We have got this, there's a lot of tree planting that goes on in Canada. I haven't heard about this before, but they're after fires or after logging. After logging in particular, logging companies will need to have to generally pay people to go in there and plant trees, and a single person can plant over 3,000 trees in a day, and they may get paid between 17 and 44 cents per tree. So that can be a few $100 there. And this one was, there was like a lady who was on TikTok who was showing herself doing it. And this is just an interesting thing of different ways to do reforestation. This is particularly up in Canada. So if you're up in Canada and you've got any free time this summer, look into going out and planting trees. It's a fairly common thing up there in the big forestry regions, and you can get real fit, make a little bit of money. Our next news related thing, and about that tree planting stuff, the fires in Canada are still going on, so that is unfortunate, and things are still really hot. So I talked about both of those things a few weeks ago now, and as of whatever today is, July something, towards the end of July 20, July 20 somethingth, it all is still going on. So that's very sad and very unfortunate that is going on, but cool to get a little view into how reforestation happens, and something that you do, make some bucks, get a nice little farmer stand going on. Okay, our next news article is that there is a big beluga migration which goes on annually up in Manitoba and Canada in the Hudson Bay. And this group called Polar Bear International is running underwater cameras and microphones. They're also facilitating a citizen science project where volunteers can look at their cameras and take photos of the look. Oh, there it is. Oh no, it's a highlight. Okay, so I'll put up a little video below, and we'll just play that for for a few seconds here. So they've got these cameras that are up in the lake, and I don't know what attracts the beluga to them, but they have got all these beluga. There's over, I think I already said, over 50,000 beluga will be migrating into this bay, and and so this camera is showing the beluga. They have the little highlight reel here of belugas, and it just gives you an idea of how many freaking belugas there must be in this bay, because there's at least while I'm watching the highlight reel now, there's like 8 just in the view of the camera, and they must be curious about it or something, because they are hanging around. Or maybe it's on a boat. I'm not in particular, because it sure looks like they're swimming through the water. But and it's on Beluga Boat Cam. So this is in the Churchill Estuary, and yeah, so that's just a cute little view of some beluga for you. 57,000 migrating in the Hudson Bay each year. So if you're just listening, hopefully there will have been some sounds of beluga there, but definitely worth checking out. If you just go on YouTube and look for the Beluga Boat Cam, it's pretty adorable. I think they have a highlight reel going pretty often, and then they just have it going regularly, which will be usually just a bit of murky water. But the way they're getting citizen scientists, so they're getting volunteers who are watching along to take photos and or to take stills of this going on, and they will use this presumably to somehow get an idea of these beluga populations. Okay, another thing I saw in the news this week is the increased popularity of sky wells, and looking to them in particular to incorporate them into new buildings. And the sky wells we're talking about in particular were used and developed in 14th century China in humid regions there. And this is a square or rectangular courtyard in the middle of a building with a water basin in the middle that catches water. And so having a hole in the middle of your building creates ventilation on its own, but there's a cool little process that goes on when you've got the water in there as well. So as the water is evaporating, it'll cool things down, and it can cool the inside of houses by up to 4 degrees. So I really like to see these. It's amazing the way that we can construct buildings to be cooler or to be warmer without having to do any sort of active air conditioning or things like that, because those things take so much energy to run. And we've got things like this. We've also got, there's another one that I was seeing that is, I'm not sure what country it was from. I think it was from Iran, where they've got these big towers. They've got almost the opposite. They've got a sort of tower system that's able to pull air through. And generally you have an area that's warmer, so you create this sort of circulation going on that brings in air and cools it down. But there's a lot of really cool solutions going on like this I hope to see getting incorporated into more buildings. Okay, and our last news article this week is that scientists have found a way to convert trash into graphene, which is an important material used extensively in electronics that you generally have to mine. And what they're doing is they were flash heating carbon sources. And carbon sources in this case were cockroaches, Girl Scout cookies, and coal. And they provide this shock heat, this flash heat to one of those carbon sources and are converting it into graphene. So graphene, my understanding is it is like a sort of carbon material that it's used as a conductor, which I don't really have a good definition of what a conductor is, but not a train conductor, but conducting stuff. And it could help possibly work around future mining. So if you can upscale this process and you've got other carbon sources, possibly trash, possibly coal they were talking about, is you can convert coal into this and then you incorporate graphene into concrete production and it helps sequester carbon. So that is some news going on this week. And that's about all I got. So I hope you're having a good week. I hope you're doing well. And we'll catch y'all next time. Okay. Bye.